Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You guys sent in some really interesting stuff, and this one's especially cool. It's about a breakthrough in Huntington's disease research, like a major breakthrough. We're talking brand new insights into those protein clumps, the ones that cause all the problems in HD. And get this, for the first time ever, scientists have actually managed to get an image of these clumps.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing being able to actually visualize these structures. It's a total game changer.
Now, I know a lot of you are already familiar with the basics of Huntington's disease, but just in case you're new here, it's a genetic condition. It affects the brain. Basically, you inherit a faulty gene, and this gene makes a protein called Huntington. And this protein, well, it goes a bit haywire. Instead of doing its job, it forms these abnormal clumps that we're talking about. They're called fibrils. And these fibrils, they really wreak havoc on brain cells.
Yeah, that's right. And for years, we've known about these fibrils, but we've been totally in the dark about their exact structure. It's like trying to solve a puzzle without even knowing what the pieces look like. But now with this new image, it's like all the pieces have suddenly snapped into focus.
So let's zoom in on this image. What's the first thing that jumps out at you?
Well, the most striking thing, and honestly something their researchers weren't expecting at all, is that these Huntington fibrils, they have this sort of fuzzy coat on their surface.
A fuzzy coat?
Yeah.
That's not something you hear every day. What's the deal with this coat? Like, what's it made of?
It turns out it's made up of the mutated portion of the Huntington protein. It's like the fibril is wearing this spiky armor, and that armor is what's causing the damage.
So it's not just a static layer.
No, not at all. It's incredibly dynamic. Imagine it as this constantly shifting, bristly surface. It's poking and prodding the surrounding brain cells. And this is where it gets really interesting. You see this fuzzy coat. It gives us a very specific target. So instead of trying to attack the entire fibril, which is kind of like trying to fight a monster in the dark, we can now focus on this coat, like disrupting its interactions or even preventing its formation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like finding the Achilles heel of the Huntington protein.
Where?
But how does this fuzzy coat actually cause damage? What's going on at the molecular level?
Well, we're still kind of piecing that puzzle together, but there are a couple of leading theories. One idea is that this fuzzy coat is interfering with essential processes inside brain cells. Think of it like this. Our brain cells are constantly sending signals to each other, right? And they rely on this complex network of pathways and molecules to do this. Now imagine this fuzzy coat getting in the way, disrupting the flow of information and essentially causing a communication breakdown between brain cells.
So it's like a monkey wrench in the machinery of the brain.
Exactly. And another possibility is that this fuzzy coat is triggering a harmful immune response. See, our immune system is designed to protect us from invaders, right? But sometimes it can get a little overzealous and start attacking our own cells. And it's possible that this fuzzy coat looks so foreign to the immune system that it triggers an inflammatory attack, leading to further damage in the brain.
Wow, so it's a double whammy. It disrupts brain cell communication, and it could even trigger an immune attack. No wonder these fibrils cause so much trouble. But this discovery of the fuzzy coat, that feels like a real turning point, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's like we've finally been given a map to navigate this complex disease. And with this map, we can start to chart a course towards new treatments and maybe even a cure.
So we've really zoomed in on this incredible image of the Huntington fibril and its spiky, fuzzy coat. But how does this actually help people with Huntington's?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? See, this isn't just about understanding the disease better. It's about fighting back. And that starts with diagnosis. Imagine being able to detect these fibrils early, maybe even in a simple spinal tap. We could analyze the cerebrospinal fluid, the fluid that cushions your brain and spinal cord, and look for signs of these spiky fibrils.
Yeah, that would be huge. Right now, diagnosis is based on genetic testing and waiting for symptoms to appear, which often means we're catching it way too late in the game.
Exactly. Early detection is key. If we could identify people at risk before they even show symptoms, well, it'd open up a whole new world of possibilities for intervention and treatment.
It's like catching a fire when it's just a tiny spark instead of waiting until the whole house is burning down.
That's a great analogy, and that's just the beginning. This structural insight also gives us a blueprint for developing targeted therapies.
Okay, let's talk about that. How could we actually target these fibrils with medication?
Remember that fuzzy coat we talked about? It's like the exposed weak point of the fibril. It's a prime target for drug development.
So we could design a drug that specifically attacks this fuzzy coat. What would that look like?
Well, there are a few really exciting possibilities. One approach is to develop a drug that basically puts a shield around the fuzzy coat, preventing it from interacting with and harming brain cells.
So it's like neutralizing the weapon before it can do any damage.
Precisely. Another strategy is to go after the fibril formation itself. What if we could develop a drug that prevents these mutated Huntington proteins from clumping together in the first place?
Wow, so it's like cutting off the problem at its source. But how do we even begin to design drugs that can do these things?
That's where the detailed image of the fibril comes in. It's like having a blueprint for the enemy, now that we know exactly what these fibrils look like, and especially the unique structure of the fuzzy coat. Scientists can get to work designing and testing molecules that can specifically interact with them.
I know this is still early stage research, but are there any other totally out-of-the-box ideas on the table?
Well, one approach that's gaining traction is immunotherapy.
You mean training the body's own immune system to attack these fibrils? Isn't that how some cancer therapies work?
That's right. It's a fascinating avenue, and it's already showing promise in other areas of medicine. Imagine a vaccine that could teach the immune system to recognize and destroy these harmful protein clumps. It's like enlisting the body's own defenses to fight the disease.
That would be revolutionary. Anything else on the horizon?
Oh yeah, there are some pretty mind-blowing ideas out there. We're talking about gene editing techniques that could potentially correct the mutated Huntington gene itself.
Wait, you're saying we could potentially rewrite the genetic code to prevent the disease from developing in the first place? That sounds like science fiction.
I know, right? But it's important to remember that these techniques are still in their early stages. But the fact that we're even having these conversations is a testament to how far we've come.
It really feels like we're entering a new era of Huntington's research. But with all this focus on the science, it's important to remember the human side of this story, right?
Absolutely. Behind every research paper, every lab experiment, there are real people whose lives are deeply affected by this disease.
You know, it's easy to get lost in all the science. But we got to remember that Huntington's disease is more than just a scientific puzzle to solve. It affects real people, families, entire communities.
It really does. And you know, the science is incredibly important, of course. But it's the human stories that really bring it home, you know, the impact this disease really has.
Exactly. So in this final part of our deep dive, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. I want to focus on the people living with Huntington's and those who dedicate their lives to supporting them.
Well, we actually have the chance to connect with the Huntington's Disease Society of America, the HDSA, and they shared some truly inspiring stories with us. Stories of resilience, courage, and hope.
You know, we hear a lot about the challenges of living with Huntington's, the physical symptoms, the emotional toll, but I was really struck by the strength and determination of these families.
It is pretty incredible. They're not just coping with this disease, you know. They're fighting back, they're raising awareness, fundraising for research, advocating for better care, and supporting each other every step of the way.
One story that really stuck with me was about a young woman named Sarah. She was diagnosed with Huntington's in her early 30s. She was just starting her career, planning her wedding, and then, bam, this diagnosis just hit her out of nowhere.
I can't even imagine the shock and the fear she must have felt.
She told us it was like her whole world just came crashing down. But here's the thing. Instead of letting the diagnosis define her, she decided to use her experience to help others. She became an advocate for Huntington's research and started sharing her story to raise awareness.
That's amazing. It takes so much strength to do that, and it's so important for people to share their stories. It really helps others understand what it's actually like to live with this disease.
Yeah, and it's not just Sarah. The HDSA told us about so many families who are turning their pain into purpose. They're organizing walks, bike rides, even dance marathons to raise money for research. They're lobbying lawmakers to increase funding for Huntington's programs. They're even creating support groups to connect with others who understand what they're going through.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of such a difficult disease, there's still so much hope and love and determination, and this is where the science and the human element really come together.
It's like a two-way street, right? The scientists are working tirelessly in the labs, fueled by the hope that their discoveries will make a real difference for people like Sarah. And the families, the patients, they're the ones driving the urgency, pushing the research forward, reminding us all why this work is so important.
It's a beautiful synergy. It makes me believe that together we can actually create a future free from Huntington's disease.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored groundbreaking scientific discoveries, we talked about the potential for new treatments, and we even heard some truly inspiring stories of resilience and hope.
And we've seen how closely connected the science and the human side of this story really are.
If there's one thing I want you to take away from all of this, it's that Huntington's disease is a complex and challenging disease. But there is real reason to be hopeful. Research is advancing at an incredible pace, and there's a growing community of passionate people who are dedicated to finding a cure.
Yeah, so keep learning, keep exploring, and keep believing in the power of science and the human spirit.
And if you want to get involved, there are so many ways to make a difference. You can support organizations like the HDSA, spread awareness about Huntington's disease. You can even participate in research studies. Every action, big or small, can help bring us closer to a cure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.